We are back with our Know Before You Vote chance to hear from candidates who would like your vote ahead of the August election. Elliott Schuchardt is running for District 18. This is Elaine Davis's seat in the State House. And just for people who don't know, it covers a wide swath of ground. Explain some of the neighborhoods, and then we'll get into your priorities.
Okay, well, for the big picture, there are about 99 representatives in the Tennessee General Assembly, and Knox County touches on 7 of them. The one that I'm running in is arguably probably the most important of those districts. It's District 18, and it's kind of dead center, entirely encompassed within the county. It covers West Knox, all the way out to Pellissippi Parkway, all the way into the kind of the western suburbs of the city. And then it covers most of South Knox as well, about halfway out to Seymour. So it's a pretty big area.
Almost 70,000 people as they try to break up the districts into those 70,000 people chunks. Explain what you're hearing when you're knocking on doors from people that may vote for you about their priorities.
Okay, yes. The priorities that I'm hearing when I'm knocking on doors are primarily concerns about the rapid development of the area, mainly. We've seen a tremendous increase in traffic on I-40 over the last 10 years, and that's something that I think that our state representatives really need to be dealing with. So, for example, I-40, of course, really jams up during the rush hour, and especially when the students are in school. There's actually solutions to this. Solution number one is, I believe that we need to be focusing on building a bypass from western I-40 up to I-75. And the state has been talking about doing this for years, but it's time that we actually start moving forward and getting that project on the books and getting money allocated so that gets done.
Another thing that is on the books is this upgrade to I-40 in the I-75, I-40 split, where we may see choice lanes, critics would call them toll lanes, and options for drivers to speed up that way. Is that something you're supportive of?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I kind of refer to those as kind of easy pass lanes. And I think that is something that needs to be done, mainly because right now the traffic is not moving a lot of the time, and at the very least we need to make sure that our emergency vehicles are able to get through. Now, under federal law, we can install Easy Pass electronic tolling lanes, provided that we expand the road at least one lane to accommodate the electronic tolling lane. It's not currently legal to put in a tolling lane on an existing road. So we're not going to be affecting the existing traffic by limiting options. We're going to be expanding the road in order to add that type of lane.
One thing that is Tennessee's, to its credit, and then also to its concern in terms of expanding infrastructure, is it's a pay-as-you-go state. And for our viewers who don't know, that means the state does not bond projects. There is some talk in the legislature we need to rethink that. Is that something you would support?
Yes, it is. I do totally support bonding, because the projects are getting more complicated, and we simply cannot be doing pay as you go for these projects. We're going to have to start bonding and financing them out over 30 or even 40 years, as the way most states do this.
You are challenging Republican Elaine Davis for this seat. What makes you different from her?
Okay, I differ from Elaine Davis on a number of issues. Issue number one is I'm not actually sure what her issue in the child custody thing is, but I'm actually calling for 50-50 custody in divorce cases. Now, Tennessee legalized no-fault divorce way back in 1971. So prior to that, you had to show adultery or some other problem with the divorce. But in 1971, we said that people could get a no-fault divorce. Since then, we've had our young people arguing about child custody. And it's been 50 years of arguing about child custody with unequal allocations of custody time between the father and the mother. Now, a handful of states have come up with a solution which I think is better on this. In fact, 6 states are now doing 50-50 presumed custody so that each parent gets equal time with the child. And 2 of our neighboring states have already done this. West Virginia and Kentucky have already adopted a presumption of 50-50 custody. And if it's not appropriate, the judge can modify that. But what's really interesting is that these states are finding that their divorce rates are falling after they adopt this presumption of 50-50 custody. For example, West Virginia found that their divorce rate fell by 6% more than the national average after they did this. Arkansas, after they did this, found that their divorce rate fell by 16%. So this is something that I think is consistent with family values, and I think it's something that we need to try.
I hear that's a priority of yours. Is there anything about her voting record that you differ on right now?
Elaine and I have a difference about the Judicial Ethics Board, and this was what first brought me into the system. The Judicial Ethics Board is supposed to be regulating lawyers. The Judicial Ethics Board is doing more than regulating lawyers. They're actually filing ethics cases against lawyers that are running for office. So in recent years, the Judicial Ethics Board has filed so-called ethics cases against 59 lawyers running for office. Most of these people were running for judge, and that's really interesting because a lawyer is not allowed to run for judge if they're not in good standing with the Judicial Ethics Board. So there's an appearance that they're interfering with elections, and that's illegal under Tennessee law. There's an act called the Little Hatch Act, which says that public employees are not supposed to be interfering with elections. And we've got the Judicial Ethics Board filing cases against lawyers running for office. In fact, they filed cases against lawyers who were running for governor twice, against lawyers who were running for president of the United States twice. They filed an ethics case against a lawyer who was a clerk for a United States Supreme Court justice. They filed ethics cases against 2 lawyers who were president of their county bar associations. Now, there's other problems with this board. In addition to them playing politics with what they're filing, they also get to choose their own judge. So in other words, the person prosecuting the case, the actual lawyer prosecuting the case, gets to choose their own judge. Now, I went to Elaine a couple years ago, and I said, hey, we've got problems with this board. And Elaine said, yeah, I'll deal with it. I'll look into it. Elaine is the vice chair of the Judiciary Committee. So she's supposed to be knowing about this stuff. She's supposed to be investigating these things, and she's responsible for deciding the rules as to whether or not they're holding hearings. And Elaine hasn't done anything on this, at least to my knowledge. And that's why I said, Elaine, I'm going to run against you, and we're going to clean up this government, and I'll do it if necessary.
I also read that you are a supporter of having the Attorney General an elected position. Explain why you support that and why it's important, you think, to the populace in this state.
Well, I think that is a very important issue. And the reason why is 43 states have an elected Attorney General. Tennessee is one of the few where state insiders get to appoint that person. Now, the Attorney General is really important because the Attorney General is the chief law enforcement employee for the state. So if we have a corruption issue, the Attorney General is supposed to be cleaning it up. But in the case where I was just talking about with this ethics board, the Attorney General hasn't done that because the Attorney General is appointed by the same people that are creating the appearance of the problem. So I believe that if we had an elected Attorney General, like 43 other states, we would have a much more honest government in this state.
Any other issues that you are seeing as a priority for either you or the constituents in District 18?
There is another issue. In fact, last year I wrote a book, and it's called America's Achilles Heel, How to Protect Your Family When America Loses the Reserve Currency. And in that book, I argued that the United States dollar is artificially overvalued because the dollar is being used as the main reserve currency. So in other words, about 50% of the demand for the dollar comes from demand from oil that is produced and sold overseas. And that's provided tremendous blessings for us ever since 1974 when this system was put in place. If we want to import Japanese cars, we just print dollars. The dollars are convertible to oil, and we get the Japanese cars. If we want to import, say, $100 billion of goods from China to finance the trade deficit, all we do is print the dollars are convertible to oil, and we get the $100 billion of goods. This has been tremendously wonderful for us, but on the other hand, it poses a tremendous risk as well. Because if we lose the monopoly, remember, the dollar is artificially overvalued because of the system. Suppose oil trades in a currency other than dollars. The 50% of the dollar's demand comes from this oil. If that 50% demand goes away, the dollar drops potentially 50%, doubling the cost of gasoline and doubling the cost of imported goods. So instead of paying, say, $40,000 for that Japanese imported car, now you're paying $80,000 for that car. Instead of paying $3.80 for a gallon of gasoline, now you're paying $7 for a gallon of gasoline. So if we lose the oil monopoly, we could be potentially looking at a civil defense emergency. So I think the state needs to be aware of that.
Elliott Schuchardt, thank you so much for the conversation. We appreciate it. We're going to leave it there, but you are running for District 18. We wish you best of luck on the campaign trail.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate you having me on.
And you can listen to our other candidates as well on the Know Before You Vote page. Before you do vote, remember, Election Day is August 6th.